can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Weisz.
Dr. Jeremy Weisz here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I'm going to introduce formally Jim Huffman of the GrowthHit company. Jim, I always like to mention other episodes people should check out. And I've had some top agencies on. Joel Irway, founder of a webinar agency. I had Kevin Hurrigan of Spinutech, that he founded his company in 1996. I've had some SaaS companies on. Zapier was on. Profitwell, which I heard just got purchased not too long ago, and Pipe Drives. Those are cool ones. Also, before we hit record, Jim and I were talking about Anthony Standifer, who is in manufacturing. And so you can check that episode out and many more on InspiredInsider.com. And before I introduce Jim, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. And at Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We help you run your podcast. And, for me, we are really an easy button for people to launch and run their podcast. The number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I've found no better way to do that over the past decade than to profile the people and companies I most admire on this planet and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should, and we'll talk about Jim's podcast actually too. You can go to rise25.com, email us anytime with any questions you may have. John Corcoran and I have been doing it for over a decade. Happy to answer. So support at rise25.com. Check it out. Jim Huffman is CEO and founder of GrowthHit, and it's a growth marketing consultancy that's generated over $250 million in sales for their clients. And he's grown 2 startups from idea to over $10 million in sales. He's spent over $4 million on Facebook and Instagram ads. He's also the author of the Growth Marketer's Playbook. Jim, I think he even pushed Seth Godin off of the #1 spot for a couple of days, which is a big feat. If you know, Seth Godin's got a lot of clout in the space. And Jim is also startup mentor at Techstars, General Assembly, and more. He's led workshops at Fortune 500 brands like FedEx, Hot Wheels, and Intuit. And if he wasn't busy enough, he's also co-founder of One Day Design in Handsome Chaos. So, and his podcast, you can check it out, is If I Was Starting Today. So, Jim, thanks for joining me.
Jeremy, thanks for having me. You've had some amazing guests. So I'm excited to be included, but really excited to chat with you today.
Me too. Tell people about GrowthHit and what you do there.
Yeah. So GrowthHit is a growth marketing agency. So business owners or marketers hire us to work with their company to be their plug and play growth team. And simply put, we do 3 things. We can optimize your website, otherwise known as conversion rate optimization. So we do website design and development. We run your paid ads on social and Google. We do email automation, but really we're trying to run that growth strategy, trying to be that plug and play growth team. So we've been at it for almost 6 years now. So, but yeah, that's a little bit about GrowthHit.
Who are ideal clients that work with you? Because when I go to the website, it seems like you help D2C brands, you have e-commerce, you have SaaS, you have lead gen. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we like catching companies. We have industries we like, but it's really a phase. Like it's, are you pre or post product market fit? We take some that are pre product market fit, but that can be dicey. But it's really after you truly have something special and you're looking to scale and grow. For example, a company, we have some clients that just raised an A or B round. They're looking to grow. Other like B2B companies that are really expanding out of their geography, what we're helping them. We love e-commerce. We love lead gen when it's a wide-ranging appeal product. And we love SaaS as well, especially if you have like self-service pricing where we can do a lot of testing. So yeah, that's a little bit about the client base.
That probably helps you do your job easier. If you have someone product market fit, you could look at their website, make, the CRO tweaks to it, and then pour the fuel on it to run ads. And I just want to encourage people, if you go to, their website, growthhit.com, and you can scroll to the bottom and they have a funnel teardown, and you can kind of experience, at least I felt that way, Jim, I could experience where your mind is at and how your thought process is by going to the funnel teardown. So you can scroll all the way down to the bottom and click on that, and they have dozens of these funnel teardowns that you can actually see how their mind works through those screenshots. And I'm wondering, how do you vet the companies, to make sure that they have product market fit?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's very like intangible, like, oh, do you have product market fit or not? There are some metrics you can look at for signals, right? So let's look at both examples of B2B or B2C. With B2C, it's like, hey, what's your purchase conversion rate? If you have a price point that's even like 100 to 150 bucks, is it over 2% or 1.5%, even with a funnel that hasn't been optimized? And if it's a product that has high repeat purchases, it could be a consumable, or it could be something that's maybe in like fast fashion. Is your retention strong? And other ways you can do it is if you're doing surveys with net promoter score, and if people are referring it. That's one thing. On the B2B side with SaaS, it really is like, are people switching from other products to it? And do you have a really low churn rate? And are people using it even despite some of the issues or features you haven't built out yet? And like, how hard is it to close? Again, it depends on the price point with B2B, but if it's self-service, if people are just throwing money at you and you haven't optimized your pricing page, that's quite exciting. Or if it's going from marketing to sales, if you find that the sales isn't, even the most sophisticated person can't do it, that's always a good signal. But those are some kind of like quantitative things, but also things that are a little warm and fuzzy, where you start to get that feeling and you start to see, wow, this is starting to take off.
Yeah, I asked that not just for my understanding, but from a company's understanding. If they're like, it's nuanced a bit, in the companies out there may be like, are we hitting product market fit? How do we know when we're hitting product market fit? If someone is not quite at that product market fit stage, how do you decide, we'll take this person on? Because it obviously makes your job more difficult.
Yeah, we will be very honest, because if we take on someone pre-product market fit, sometimes all we'll do is help them fail significantly faster. So we'll just call it out like, hey, we're not going to be ROI positive. We might show you that this isn't working, but we can do it really fast. So we worked with the craft disruption team, where they're standing up and piloting brands. And so we stood up 3 brands with them. And a lot of startup studios have this idea of a validation machine or a validation team, where you're like, all right, in the most cost-effective and fastest way possible, how can we get traffic to a site and try and get a signal that this will work? And the best signal is, will they give you money? Before that, it's like a wait list or a pre-order. We have to be very transparent with the clients. And sometimes that engagement might be over in 3 months, but we knew that. Other times we can get lucky, and those can be amazing clients where we work with them for multiple years. Like we had one, Universal Standard. We literally met them as they were just 2 founders trying to figure out if they had something special. They're now at over 40 people, did over, I think like 20 million in funding, but we got lucky that we caught them right as they're getting traction. So we love it when we can catch companies at that inflection point.
Yeah, that's a great way to use it. It's as a testing ground to see what is going to hit the market. I think it was Tim Ferriss who split tested his title that way of his book. I can't remember. Maybe you know better than me, where he had a couple ads on and he chose the highest converting one just to choose a title.
Yeah, and it's funny. I think that is so smart, because it's easy to just like be in your own mind, like, oh, this is a great idea. But the more you put it out there and let the data drive you is huge. I forget what his other titles were, but it's funny. It's one of those titles, like it's a little cringe, but it's also, I want to read that book. It's very aspirational.
Totally. And you did this, as far as the testing ground for your company, which I mentioned, your product company. What made you decide to start that?
Yeah, so we have a startup studio with GrowthHit. One product is One Day Design, that is web pages. The other, I think you're alluding to, is Handsome Chaos, which is a direct consumer men's pomade. And so it's actually, I'm a huge fan of the book, The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. And in chapter 2, it talks about category creation. If you can't be number one in a category, create your own. So I was like, all right, I am a dude with long hair and my hair gets oily because of these other products. what if there's a dry shampoo and pomade form? So I was stealing my wife's dry shampoo, getting powder all over my black shirt. I look stupid. I was like, there has to be something better. So I was like, what if this existed? So I used a poll. I spoke to 1,000 people. I said, hey, are you a guy with longer hair? Is this a problem? One. And two, would you pay for a solution? 70% of people said it was a problem. 45 said they would pay for it. The other 40 said they'd be interested in trying to see if they would pay for it. Because I was trying to see loyalty to a brand and switching costs and see if there was a true problem. So that was enough signal for me, like, all right, I'll test this. So I then stood up a landing page, ran ads. We got 1,000 people on the wait list, pre-sold 25 products that don't exist. I shut off the ads. I'm like, all right, I think it's worth trying to manufacture this to see if we can deliver on it. And that's where so I think we're very good as a marketing agency and making websites and running ads. Where we are not strong is manufacturing real products. So we're like 14 months in, we've done like 17 variations. We finally nailed the product. Now I'm trying to get it made. And unfortunately, we're a small fish in a big pond. And our manufacturer is like, we can't get you on the line until December, January. So we're in the waiting game right now.
I want to hear, it's pretty amazing what you could do. And, what I love about your philosophy and your mentality is testing, right? Is there a problem and will people pay for that problem? And then you will create the solution instead of trying to create the solution first and then failing, right? Spending a lot of time and money. What made you decide to start the startup studio?
Yeah, well, it goes back to like starting an agency. I didn't want to start an agency or be an agency owner. I wanted to have the big idea. And like, because this is a time, it's like I'm reading about like Zuckerberg, and like the only path is to have the idea in your dorm room and then fast forward, you're a billionaire. So it's like, oh, I'll just wait for the idea. But I was, working with a few different startups and I was consulting on the side. And all of a sudden I'm an agency owner and a consultant, which, to be honest, I do love, because I get to work with so many impressive founders doing insanely interesting things. But I always, in the back of my mind, is like, if we're such a good growth team, why can't we grow our own stuff? And that's what gets me really fired up. And so as I read about Atomic VC out of Miami, who has a startup studio, or Pioneer Square Labs in Seattle and their startup studio, I was like, hey, what would that look like with an agency model? And so that's, and it's something that even my partner at the agency, we were very aligned from the start. The agency isn't the end goal. The agency is the launch pad to allow us to do the startup studio. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we've always wanted to kind of do that. And the agency was the mechanism to get there.
Yeah. How do you structure and segment the startup studio from your company? Because I know GrowthHit is kind of funding. I mean, even Google has, its own, growth studio or whatever you want to call it. But GrowthHit funds it. You have a startup studio. What's the format? How do you decide, listen, this team is going to work a percentage of time, or do you segment people are only working on the startup studio? How do you kind of structure that?
Yeah, a couple different ways. Well, first, we had to get the agency in a place where I wasn't the product, my partner wasn't the product, and it could really run like a business and not be as dependent on us. We're still trying to land that plane, but we're getting better. So that was the first thing. That way we could dedicate time to standing these things up, because I love going from 0 to 1. As far as structuring the agency, there's kind of two different things we're thinking through. One is, what is a shared resource for the agency versus what is a resource only GrowthHit can have, and then only like One Day Design or Handsome Chaos could have. The shared resource is kind of obvious. It's the growth team. So we put people on the startup studio projects that treat One Day Design, treat Handsome Chaos like a client. And I'm very involved in those, kind of like the growth lead on that. And so that's one component. And the second thing is, we have to get people that will take ownership in these and push these forward, because I can't be the chief everything officer of every company. That would fall apart. And so we've created a role at the agency called, like, at VC firms, they have an EIR, the entrepreneur in residence. So we have an agency EIR where we're a very different agency in that we're not remote first, we're remote only. a lot of part-time and contract workers that are hourly. And we're able to get really talented people because it's like, hey, yeah, you could work for a VC-backed startup or I'm in Seattle. You could go to Amazon or, hey, come work with us. Come work on some really cool clients. And by the way, we have a startup studio. You can be an entrepreneur in residence. If you have an idea, let's validate it. Or we have some ideas. Would you like to have some significant upside and potentially run it or become a GM? We've successfully done that with Handsome Chaos, where our creative director is also a founding member of that entity. We're working on it for One Day Design as well. And so those are things we're trying to figure out. But the key thing, though, is like the agency has to be profitable and it has to sustain to enable those ventures. Because like One Day Design doesn't necessarily need funding, whereas Handsome Chaos does. And so we will draw the line at a certain number to where it then needs to pay for itself, or we'd look for other sources of funding.
Jim, talk about culture for a second, because you mentioned something cool. You probably attract a lot of entrepreneurs, right? Because they have the structure of the agency and getting paid, but they can also, have some of the creativity of working on and starting a new business.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but like when starting my business, I was like, culture was a footnote on what was important. I look at business in a spreadsheet, right? But then as you try and grow something, you're like, oh, wow, people are the most important thing. Who would have thought? Because the right hires are transformative, and we kind of accidentally created a culture that we were proud of. And then you had to be very intentional with it. And it started because my partner and I, when we were starting out, we're like, what's the end goal here? What are we trying to do? And we're on the same page. Like, first, like there can be a lot of shade on the idea of a lifestyle design business, but we're like, no, let's lean into it. Let's make a business that's designed for the lifestyle we want. And we want to build other businesses and do this startup studio model. So the fact that we were on the same page helped us attract the right people. And then we started doing from the book Traction called EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System. And we're like, oh, let's be intentional with culture, because if you don't create it, the people that you hire will, and it might not be what you want. So I do the first screening call for culture. My first call with them once they work with us is going over like our values, and the values aren't like integrity or diversity. It's we found people at our company that are rock stars, and we're like, what traits do they have that we want replicated? And that's what we highlight. And it is the most important thing. And we've been able to get really talented people, not necessarily pay them cheaper than what Amazon would pay, because that is true. We hope to give them upside that will make them very, very happy, but we're able to get them from competitive places like that, all because of culture and values. And it's something that's kind of my biggest role, is to be the person that's spearheading culture at the company.
Jim, what are a few of those traits you look for? And I want to point out, Gino Wickman, author of Traction, EOS. You could check out the episode we did on Inspired Insider, but also just get his book Traction, and he's got a book Rocket Fuel with Mark Winters as well, which is also really good. But what are some of the traits you look for?
Yeah, we have a no jerks policy where we don't settle for any office drama. It's just we've all been in those toxic environments, and one person can ruin everything. So that's number one. Second is speed wins. We do speed over perfection 10 out of 10 times. We also have think like a founder, not just working with CEOs at our agency, but for the startup studio. Like, don't just come and be like, oh, here's what we should do. It's like, if you're the CEO of this company, what do you care about? What matters? We also have this idea of being decision makers, not order takers. Because, especially when we're supposed to be thought leaders, people need to look at us to be those decision makers and not thought leaders. And then the final is like relentlessly raise the bar. We want people that are in their free time devouring podcasts on business or watching YouTube videos on how to do the latest and greatest thing. And if we can get aligned on those values, then we feel really excited about the team we put together.
Jim, thanks for that. Jim, how do you, from Startup Studio, came One Day Design? I'm sure there's a lot of ideas that come out of Startup Studio and you decide to just not go with them. So how did it work when you first started One Day Design?
Yeah, there's this blog post called The Value of Wealth Creation by Nathan Barry. And he talks about how to essentially ladder up with your businesses. You start as an employee, and then you can sell services, and then productized services, then products, and then SaaS. And as we looked at that, we're like, what's the next rung up? And it was really a productized service. And the thing that's magical about a productized service is it takes, what's nice about the agency, like being able to quickly stand it up and get money up front, but you productize it so it's not custom work. It's something that's much more predictable. So we're like, okay, what is something we could productize out of GrowthHit and make its own thing? We're like, actually, we're quite good at like designing for things that convert and doing web pages or ads or emails. We're like, what if we had this like hired gun of a design team? We'll call it one day design. So we talked to leads that came into GrowthHit that couldn't afford GrowthHit. We're like, hey, we can't afford this service, but would you be interested in that? And like, actually, that's super interesting. So out of the gate, we didn't even have a website. We got clients and we tested it. And then we just recently did a launch on Product Hunt. And it's been so exciting to see that work, because anyone that runs an agency, the trials and tribulations of you close a client and then they're calling you, you have all this stuff going on, and you might have to bend over backwards for them. And with productized service, it's like, this is what it is, take it or leave it. And it's kind of magical, not as magic as magical as a SaaS company, but it's up there. And so, we're transparent. We build in public. We publish all of our stuff on Twitter. Like we launched 2 or 3 months ago, and we hit 60K in sales, and we're like, wow, this is super interesting. But it's all because we learned the hard way running an agency.
Love it. You mentioned your partner. I want to dig a little bit into that. And how did you meet? And, how did you decide to form this partnership?
Yeah, it isn't traditional. Like we were like in a dorm room together and lightning struck and we pulled an all-nighter and came up with an idea. I was a freelancer. I created GrowthHit. I was grinding for 2 years. And yes, I was an quote unquote agency owner. I was a glorified freelancer with people helping me. Right. And we got to a decent size, but I definitely plateaued and I was burnt out. I was about to pass out from exhaustion. And here's like the main takeaway from what I'm about to say is I have a weekly newsletter. There's not that many people. And I had like a meetup group, and I would just send out weekly updates about what's going on. And this guy was following me for a while, and I had a job post for a junior CRO analyst. And he reached out. He's like, hey, probably not the right guy for the junior position, but let's talk. And what was interesting about me building in public, he already knew everything about me. He came in for an interview. He interviewed me. I didn't interview him. And he totally flipped the table. And he's like, this is why I think we would work well together. And he worked for free for a month. And after seeing what it's like to work together, I was like, name your price. What do you want? Let's go. And that's how we found each other. Like I was already 2 years in. And the thing I did that was accidentally smart was just building in public and letting people know what I'm doing, and the talent can find you. So that's how we met.
When he came on, Jim, I think you're talking about, I don't know if you pronounce it Jonathan.
Correct.
When he came on, what changed?
Oh, everything. And what's nice is when you're trying to find a partner, it's like, do you have overlapping skills or complementary skills or competing skills? And by the way, all of those can work in some scenarios. I'm more of a fan of complementary skills, because where I'm like the dancing monkey that's generating business and I'm doing a lot of the deliverables, he's very strong at process and systems. So he's like, I can't believe you built this agency with the way it's being run. And he came in and really took it to that next level from a productivity and efficiency and operations standpoint, and allowed me to get out of the business to help run the business and focus on some of the key things. And so that literally got us over the hurdle to 7 figures was just operations and efficiency there.
I want to talk about a few success stories so I can understand and people can understand more about what you do. Specifically, there was a B2B company in kind of marketing software. And I would love to understand what you did with them.
Yeah, what's super interesting with them is they came to us. They had a really cool kind of hardware product for SMBs and then a software component tied to it. But they're like, what's working right now is just cold outreach. How do we actually get people with marketing? And so we look at their funnel, and they literally just have like a contact us page. it's like, we haven't even thought about how do we activate these people? Do we need to activate them with content before you can sell? Let's give them downloads. Let them know like the value that you offer, the problem they solve. They weren't doing any webinars. They didn't even have a pricing page to help people do that evaluation. And so just by coming in, we ran some experiments on, hey, what are the different ways to activate people with marketing? Is it get them with content and do email drip campaigns? Is it going for the jugular with a pricing page? Or is it, do a webinar and then to a sales call? And once we started to uncover what works there, what's nice about this product, it was wide appeal to SMBs. We started actually doing social ads that outperformed their Google ads, that showed like the before and after of using their hardware product, that showed kind of like the ROI you could expect. And then we had some really good kind of ebooks and content we put out there. And what's exciting is we've been able to get them to find a channel outside of cold email to have marketing work to where they've doubled the amount of people they have as a sales team, where we're just trying to feed them leads. And so that part's really exciting when you see a company where it's going well, but you help them find like repeatable and scalable growth.
So for them, you found that education was really huge for the nurturing process.
Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing to think about before you get into a sales call, are you perceived as a salesperson or a thought leader? Because if you can arm them with all this content, so they look at you like, oh, wow, you guys know your stuff. Those sales calls aren't sales calls, they're onboarding calls because you've pre-sold them. And so from getting them with content to the drip series before they get on that sales call, it can really help with your sales velocity and with your close rate.
How did you use those findings, Jim, in the social ads?
Yeah. So one thing that's a little tricky with B2B is if you don't have a product that can appeal to a lot of people, you can be capped on your approach or scalability. What was nice is kind of all SMBs could use this product and software. And since the iOS update, the most important lever you can pull for a creative is not custom audiences. Those haven't been updated in 4 years. It's not lookalikes. Those aren't as impactful. It's your creative. Your creative finds your audience. And because we are learning what content works, and we learned on those sales calls what the person cares about, we made ads that talked about the pain. We pour salt in the wound of what's not working. We also played to the aspiration with the clients where it's working well. Here's what they're seeing. And we're able to have visuals with before and afters and have data that showed that. And then the content lead into the salt in the wound or the aspiration.
Love it. You also helped an ed tech SaaS company as well.
Yeah. What's interesting with this, that's kind of the opposite of the SMBs, where it was a very narrow audience. And they thought they had to grow with a long close cycle. They thought they had to grow just with a sophisticated, almost like bottoms up approach. What's cool is they can create a spreadsheet of their 2,000, or not even 2,000, actually it's probably like 1,000 customers, and just go after them. And that would probably work. But what we found was, because they had so many amazing simulations, their biggest asset was their product. And they weren't showing people it, they were telling people about it. And so we kind of flipped their activation model on its head, where instead of having it behind a paywall and going for the jugular with the sales call, what if we tested a freemium version? What if we tested a free trial? And so really changing how you can activate, because they had such amazing simulations, we were able to do experiments where, hey, here's the product for free, or sign up for a free webinar where we're going to walk you through it, or here's a free trial. So we tested those 3 different ways to activate, because sometimes your product is your best marketing when you can put it out there for free. And so that allowed us to uncover 2 things. Sometimes we couldn't get to the decision maker at the company, but we could get to the evangelist who would get to the decision maker at the company. And so that was super exciting to do the ads and then the landing page, and help not just transform their marketing, but their product roadmap on like, hey, what should be free? What should not be free? That's great for activation, but this is what's great for retention and for getting them to be a paying customer. So that one was pretty exciting.
Now, I know, Jim, you've helped a lot of different types of companies in the D2C space as well. And there was specifically a dresses company.
Yeah, so this one was in the bridal space. They are private equity backed. They came to us with this idea, and they're like, okay, we want to own the bridal space. Let's do this. And so we're like, all right, if you're a D2C company and you're about to launch, your brand almost doesn't matter. It does, but the tip of the spear is your flagship product. So it's like, what's your flagship product or category? So we had some assumptions on what that could be. And they spent a lot of money on some fancy videos, but here's the big insight. We launch and we're like, one dress is doing okay, but it doesn't have those signals. But as we start to see some orders come in and we actually talk to customers, what was interesting was we found out the reason why people bought this one dress, like, oh, it has pockets. It has big pockets. So at the wedding, I don't have to have a purse. And we're like, oh, wow. What you care about is this use case and this feature. We're going all in on it. So it was literally a campaign around, how to use this dress, why it's great. It's about the pockets. And that's what got the attention. Yes, there's other reasons on like shipping and price that got the conversion across. But as we're working with influencers and user-generated content, it was all about pounding the pavement on that key use case and feature that literally got them to 7 figures. Obviously, and then we designed the funnel and the website around, that kind of flagship product that had that use case. And so it's amazing, even looking at something like Spanx, I got to 8 figures on the back of one use case. So with D2C brands, we're obsessed with flagship product, main use case, problem we're solving, because that can open up a lot of doors.
Jim, that's awesome. I love it. Who would have thought pockets, right? Mentors, some of your mentors. I know you mentor people in Techstars and in some of these other, places. Who are some of your mentors? Maybe it's distant from a book or something else, or actually someone you know personally.
Yeah, I have mentors that I've never met that I really follow and look to. And then I have, you could call them mentors, but it's people that I'm friends with but are older than me in what I call founder years, where they could be my same age or younger, but they've had a business longer than I have. And so I really look to them. So in that first category, I think Andrew Wilkinson of formerly Meta Labs and now Tiny Capital, he's a guy who's gone from agency to having essentially like being the Warren Buffett of the internet, like a micro private equity firm, is super inspirational. As far as peers, like I think you and I are both an EO entrepreneurship organization. My buddy Adam Weiler, who has Sunken Stone, an extremely impressive Amazon agency that is like more than 2-3 times the size of us. I learn a lot from people like him. But yeah, and like Nathan Barry, someone I love his content. He's very much an original thinker. I think we already spoke about that I look to for inspiration.
Yeah, he's the founder of ConvertKit. So, who are your favorite podcast guests? I know I mentioned in the beginning some of the favorites. Who are some of your favorites on your show?
Yeah, Tommy Griffith is a complete rock star. He is the CEO of ClickMinded, and they do SEO courses, but they also do SOPs, standard operating procedures, for agencies, like the documentation on, hey, how to update your Facebook pixel now that the Facebook ad manager has changed. And why he's one of my favorite guests is he's a former Airbnb guy, ran SEO for Airbnb, started his own agency. They've gotten into well into 7 figures. They have like under 5 people, insane margins, and he's just done it differently on how to run a business. He's very much from the Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week, ideology, and he's done it really well. So he's been a great guest. Rob Sobers, the CMO of Verona Security Software. Why he's impressive is he's another original thinker, former developer turned marketer, who is just so on top of it when it comes to marketing and growth. I was able to have Mike Michalowicz on, who is, he wrote Profit First, and I love his content. So he's been a great one.
Yeah, there's some great ones. If you are watching the video, I'm just going to bring it up on screen so you can see this. But there it is. If I was starting today, and because I wanted to look at GrowthHit for a second, and Jim, and look at these funnel teardowns because it's so cool and people should check it out. But so you can you'll see on the screen if you were watching the video, growthhit.com, you can check it out. And I like to learn from people, not only what they say, but what they're doing. And you can see kind of they eat their own dog food with their website. I'm sure they carry those learnings on to One Day Design. But you can see kind of how they've designed this site and the different elements here and case studies in Insane Growth. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, so I'll let you check, people check it out for themselves, but you could see there's funnel teardowns here at the bottom. So I wanted to pull up, you can go to this page, but one of my favorites, and I like this company, you can see you did a teardown of ConvertKit, Kajabi, and there's like lots of one, Zoom is on here. Personally, I just wanted to pull up this one because I like the product and maybe just have you walk through this as far as the thought process goes with Masterclass. And so, because, some of these elements of course, all of us, myself included, should be using what you are teaching and what you're, breaking down on these particular companies as well. So what did you find with, maybe we'll just go, cycle through a few of these with Masterclass.
Yeah. So I'll even start with the bottom of the funnel with Masterclass. What's genius about their funnel is actually how they price it. Because a lot of times when you're thinking through, subscription products, you have to do monthly. They don't do monthly, they do annual. And it totally changes your psychology. Because when you're like, oh, it is like $2.99 or whatever, but after you pay for it, you're like, oh, I have a year to use it. Whereas if you do it monthly, each month you see it hit your credit card and you're like, wait, do I still use it? Do I still use it? And it's genius because from a cash conversion cycle, you're getting the money up front, which is really nice. And so what they do extremely well is like the amount of authority they have is quite insane. So they can hit you on top of the head with the stars they have coming in, from Samuel L. Jackson to Dustin Hoffman to Steph Curry. But then they quantify it with 75 courses, 20 lessons, 10 minutes on the average per lesson. And then they're playing to the aspiration. So they've got the social proof, they're quantifying the value, and then they're talking about, hey, you want to learn photography? Literally learn from the best in the world. You want to learn about fashion? Learn from Anna Wintour. So as far as,
yeah, I think they have Steph Curry teaching basketball, Serena Williams teaching tennis, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah, because with any funnel, there's like 7 reasons why people don't convert. And it's like price, trust, value, confusion, urgency. And they're just knocking off so many things you're going through in your decision journey. Like, oh, wait, quality, check, social proof, value, check. The only thing, it's like urgency, like, is that there? I've seen them do some like promos and discounts. But from a comparison standpoint, it's really hard to match up with them, and their production quality is insane. But it's their funnel's quite impressive.
Love it. Yeah, I like some of the main takeaways on here, and we'll just look through a few because I think this applies to websites, which is like you start off with this powerful and simple, clear messaging.
Yeah, no, and it's like literally learning from the best in the world. 15 a month, build annually. The 15th a month, that doesn't really happen, but they're planning that in your head because they want you to view this as a Netflix subscription. So they're anchoring against that price. But when you throw the education component to it, then the value is higher. And if you look at their top channels for growth, it's interesting because YouTube's number one, which totally makes sense because their production value is so high. And they actually give away the first class or the first lesson for free. And they put so much into their trailers. Because if I've learned anything about selling digital like video products, the more you can get someone to watch the host and relate to them, the more likely you are to close them. And they do that extremely well with, YouTube being their top driver.
Yeah. So this one's got the powerful, simple, clear, the social proof, obviously there. And then the next one, which you talked about, the famous faces.
Yeah. It's hard to dispute this one. It's also what they're doing well is, if you have a great product, show the product, don't tell people about it. So it's very visual with the people. They're letting you jump in to see the trailer where you can kind of get lost in it. So that part's huge.
And then you have what you were talking about before about the benefits and value.
Yeah. So like the other thing is like, how do you like reinforce benefits and value? You can do it with taglines, second person language. You can do it with data, which they're doing here. Also, this is really good on mobile, which this one doesn't show, but that sticky or navigation is always present. So it's easy to jump in whenever you want.
Yeah. And I've gone to sites and, by the time I get down, I'm like, what? Okay, wait, what am I supposed to do here? And like you said, right here, it's floating with you. New content being added, you have more details there. And then this is one thing you mentioned too about checking it out.
Yeah, it's previewing the masterclass so you can actually like sample it. But the other thing you hit on is they're really trying to educate you that they're going to have new drops of content. So they talk about ones that are coming, but then they also show the robust library with the filtering. So you can quickly kind of like put yourself in the shoes of having the subscription.
Love it. And the next thing is something for everyone.
Yeah. Just kind of showing those categories. So you're anchoring it in the head of the consumer, everything that they would have. And you're making it easy to filter in and out of. And even on mobile, it's very easy because if they're going through the decision journey people would have for this, that's the natural question of like, oh, wait, but are they going to have the categories that I want?
Yep. And again, more social proof, more faces people would know there are front and center. And then social proof.
Yeah, I mean, look at the names on there, right? It's like Gordon Ramsay, it's Marl Stein, Annie Leibovitz. And so it's pretty cool to see like the heavy hitters they have come in. I mean, that's just next level.
Yeah. I mean, but if you look at it, I mean, you look at the same idea with your site, right? I mean, if you look at this, you have case study of insane growth, right? And you have these, you do have Netflix, you have some of these that are recognizable, but it's not everyone can have a James Patterson or something like that, but you're still using this, and you probably recommend all your clients use this as far as, social proof and credibility.
Yeah. And like with any website, there's 5 things you have to get across. And this is actually proven from Optimizely looking at 2,000 websites and the top performing ones. The first is your headline should not talk about your product. It should be benefit focused and in second person with the word you. The second thing is your hero image or video should align with that benefit focused statement, either highlighting the aspiration of what they become after using your product or play to the problem that you're solving. The third thing, the copy below your headline, that's where you can talk about your core product or core features, but do it in conversational language in under 12 words. The fourth thing is you need a call to action that is the next unique step in the journey. Don't go for the jugular with like shop now or join today. Get a free strategy call, sample the content, whatever that is. And then the final thing, the fifth thing is social proof. Give it to people where it's like, wow, this is what everybody's saying, or wow, it has 1,000 reviews that are 5 stars or above. If you can do those 5 things above the fold, you have a good shot at like having a great website that converts.
Love it. And then we have email capture.
Yeah. This funnel, even comparing it to Curology, which that's one of the best quiz funnels I have seen. They've raised $40 million on the back of that quiz funnel. They capture the email very early in the journey. So when you drop off, they can retarget. And it's something that, Masterclass is doing as well here. But, you can also log in with different social channels or with Google to easily authenticate. But it's interesting they're doing this before or after you can view the content. I think they tested this actually. Nice.
And then we have the annual billing, which you talked about.
Yeah. And notice at the very bottom, the 100% guarantee, like going for that risk reversal. So really letting people know like, hey, if you're not happy, like let us know. They have a phone number here. They have all the trust badges and signals. So risk reversal is a big thing.
Love it. And then this is just for more teardowns. You can check it out, which you're on, but you can also go to the bottom of GrowthHit.com to check out more. Jim, I just want to be the first one to thank you. This has been fantastic. And I want to encourage anyone to go to growthhit.com. Check out more about what you have going on. Check out the podcast and One Day Design. So anywhere else we should point people online?
No, that's I'm on my email is jim@growthhit.com. I'm on Twitter. I'm quite active there, Jim W. Huffman. But yeah, would love to connect. But Jeremy, thank you so much for having me on. I mean, your podcast is phenomenal. So really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everyone.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.